inquisitive, and not shy to ask questions, and not shy to accept that I might not get answers to those questions. But I also, in those lines in the poem, I'm trying to acknowledge that a lot of people do want something that gives them a purpose, a focus, a place in life, and answers their questions that gives them a source of strength.
Point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then they find solidarity with others who share their worldview. So I think part of that growth is being able to step out of that bubble, being confident in your own philosophy or beliefs or values or ethics, encountering and interacting with people who have a different worldview from your own, learning from them, respecting that view, interacting with them in terms of compassion, love, respect, working towards common goals, or saying, all right, well, we can agree to disagree on this and agree on this and work for the common good. Maybe that's a very idealistic answer.
It's very well-rounded.
The importance of asking, that's one thing my mom would always tell me, like, ask questions instead of making assumptions.
Wow.
And listen.
Big up to Mom.
And listening to me is the biggest part of growth. Observing is the biggest part of actually growing. And there is a difference between just changing as a person and growing as a person, and that's exactly what you speak on. And I think that is the ways in which we need to tread in, as long as the focal point is set and we know, or we're trying to seek ourselves in the process, seeking the truth won't be as difficult.
Big up to your mum. My tutor at Art College said something similar. He said the only stupid question is the unasked question.
Yeah,
that's what my mum
said. But for me, growing up,
shut up and hold the flashlight.
for me, growing up, I was timid in a lot of ways, or my voice, I felt like, was shut down a lot of times, and that might have been because I was the only Iranian kid or the only Muslim kid a lot of times. So I felt enclosed within myself, and my voice wasn't heard enough, which is probably why I turned to poetry and why I felt like I needed to let it out in one way or another.
That's a neat segue. People, get her book.
You
can't see it, but I'm holding it. Yeah. What was swept under the Persian rug?
Nasim Asgari.
Fresh off the print.
200
something pages.
15, 16, 17 pages. Beautiful art. Edited by Jamila Aladina.
Illustrations by Nasim Asgari, who's my big brother.
There you go. That was a neat segue and bit of shameless branding, marketing.
Thank you for that.
We don't do no one else.
Yeah,
exactly. So now let me talk about myself.
What's happening in the world, guys?
Where do we start?
Okay, so the first article that I found, just found it funny, that today is the UK supermoon.
Oh, I think I heard something about this.
So basically it's the fact that it's called the supermoon because it's really close. It's in the orbit that it does around the Earth. It's on its closest
Toronto
orbit.
just had ours.
No way.
Yeah, a month or two ago. Yeah, I believe so.
But see, the funny thing of the article was that most of the UK won't be able to see the supermoon.
Yeah.
Because
light pollution.
No, it's just the forecast of it just being too cloudy.
That's very atypical British, isn't it?
When I came here, I packed strictly sweaters and hoodies because I wasn't checking for the sun.
And Doc Martens.
Yeah. So one time, I can't even rock my dogs in Canada because everything's salted, all the roads and everything's iced up. It's gross. So I knew I'm coming here, I'm rocking my docs, rocking my hoodie, and I'm rocking like knitwear. I'm stepping out nice. When I get here, it's warm. I'm like,
I know, right?
Man.
We're in a mini heat wave at the moment.
That's beautiful.
By February standards.
Yeah.
But saying that, this week is meant to be one of the hottest days in February since 1998. It's going to
Dude, that's so deep you said that because I remember that February of 1998. I was just, obviously I was about 3 or 4
That's
at the time.
the year after I was born.
I was young.
Sorry.
But when we were talking about warm Februaries, I was like, I remember that February 1998. It was so hot, literally just going around in t-shirts.
Wow.
There we go.
So it's going to be 19 degrees at some point this week.
Oh my god, I hope we're here for that. We're leaving this Friday. But
Nice.
I mean, Toronto right now is or has been and is.
So-
It's like it fluctuates in very weird ways, and that just shows that humans are,
Nah, what, like, yeah, we say humans, like it sounds like an individual
No,
thing.
not-
No,
it's
massive corporations
and
like Nestle
companies.
and all these dudes like that. Those are the
Precisely.
ones who hold the majority of the problem.
Yeah,
And
facts.
other people are like, no, man, if you throw away and recycle your rubbish rightly,
If you
then we'll
start
get it
using
done.
a paper straw
As
instead
the
of
guys, yeah, the guys will go cut down half of this or
You know?
pump out half of that, and then be
Speak
like,
on it.
well, it can't be us, like, right? Like, nah, bro, like,
Yeah.
but that's the worst, man. It?
It's true.
Yeah, yo, like, yo, what's that moon supposed to do your tides and stuff, and like to the people even, like, 70% water is us, right? So
Yeah.
but
That's
then
where the word
everyone feeling
lunatic
odd,
comes from, isn't it? So lunatic is
then we
in,
stare the sun too, moon too long.
the idea I think was in the Victorian
Moon
times
is-
is that the moon had an influence on people's mental health and well-being, and that people who had
So that
certain
show really-
issues on that front, it was more pronounced times of
Well,
full moon.
la lune is the moon in French. Lune is French for moon.
know.
And one thing that always mesmerizes me is I've heard in certain Islamic traditions from certain schools of thought that the placement of the stars affects you at birth. And considering we've had this conversation, like you're saying,
Oh, what, Gatorade
considering
and
that
Mercury's?
that humans are we're more than 70% water.
Yeah.
And if the moon has the ability to shift the tides of the seas and the oceans, and if we're reminiscent of the earth itself, meaning we are made of dust, we are made of clay, then who are we to think that it doesn't affect us in the same magnificent ways?
I mean,
You know?
they say things like if you talk to water badly, it'll taste worse than if you talk to water nicely. So it's a proven fact. Like, the same with plants, and if you speak nicely, it promotes good growth. So
There's
I
so
do
much we
believe
just
that.
don't know, man.
Yeah, I know, but like, how many times have we done studies on that? Like, how many
Yeah,
times?
yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
accurate.
I
The
feel like
studies
it's
of
been
water
enough times
even.
that like we can actually kind of say, like, all right, well,
It's facts.
talk shit.
Yeah.
Bad stuff's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's just something that's like it goes back into what you put into the atmosphere can actually happen, right? That's a reality that you're talking and daydreaming, you know, ends up happening. Here you are, right? And that reality that you impress over yourself, whether it's like negative or even then, still I believe also in music as well too.
yeah,
Like that's just for me personally. Like I like to have a lot of like upbeat, happy, like reminiscent stuff. Something's gonna keep me in a good mood or a good aura sort of around me, right? Just because one, I don't want it now. Two, I got too much bad shit that happened to me back in the day for me to try to put on some sad stuff to remember it.
yeah.
And like it's just not. I just don't feel it's profitable, you know, right? But I know like other people do for other reasons. But yeah, it just goes back to cultivating your space, your personal space. When you interact out with other people, you know, you bring that with you. So then, this guy's so charismatic. Yo, he's got to be cultivating that every single day. And that's just not like with how he thinks, how he speaks. It's actually the things that he carries around with him, you know?
Yeah.
Whether that's like maybe some stone on your hand or like, you know, maybe some ideas in your head, music in your ears, right? It's going to be more you put in, more you spit out.
Yeah, true.
Something like that. Sort of.
All we have in life is our stories.
That sounds like a book title, bro. I like it. All we have in life is stories.
All
I
we
love
have in life is our stories.
Yeah, that's even more beautiful. I really love astrophysics to sort of segue from what we're on. And for me, astrophysics is a sole area of my life where there's a magic to it. So I'm a student of deliberate practice, as popularized by Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers,
Yes.
Canada's
yes.
great export, Mr. Gladwell. Although obviously his Caribbean ancestry, as I'm British
Yes.
ancestry, but yeah, he
No,
holds it
he's
down for Canada.
phenomenal.
And he popularized the work of a Scandinavian scientist called Anders Ericsson, who has a brilliant book called Peak, which talks about deliberate practice and the notion that to achieve mastery of any field of endeavor, you have to apply yourself diligently to the intention that you have and put in a certain amount of practice over many years. And Anders Ericsson is quite hardcore in that he, and this is not to misrepresent his work, but he's a sort of foregrounds work ethic over talent, to the point where he's saying almost that talent is almost a myth, if you see what I mean. It is about work to develop a skill set that becomes your talent. So for me, I'm very much a disciple of that belief and that philosophy. And having studied it, it removes some of the illusion, shall we say, because you see the grit behind the glitz. But for me, the one area of my interest where that magic remains is astrophysics, because it's just so beyond my comprehension. When you study the universe and just see how vast it is and like how perfect it is,
and you're humbled by it, you know.
Totally.
And for me, actually, that was a field I wanted to go into, astronomy specifically. But then I realized I'm an artist and I'm horrible at math, and you really need math to go forward with that.
Yeah, I feel your pain.
But it will forever enlighten you even, to realize how small you are in relation to, but also how huge you are in relation to. It's a beautiful balance.
That's mad.
I have a friend that one of his friends uses astrology to trade stocks.
Yo, you know what? They use monkeys sometimes, and then he went up to. I remember they use like a same sort of like thing. They use like a chimp to like play the stocks.
Yeah,
that's crazy. You play the stocks.
Yeah. So like, if certain crops are growing a certain way, then he'll invest his money in a certain stock, and it works.
Wow. I mean, even so many traditions, like so many religions and indigenous practices are based on the earth and the universe, you know. And it's just like when we sway from that and internalize the artificial in us, there's a part of us that craves to go back to what our body knows to be the organic nature of our beings as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Very eloquently articulated.
But
it's gonna be a dope episode to listen to.
Thank you for having. I wasn't even.
There you go.
There was I had no idea this would even be happening.
Serendipitous.
Serendipitous. I'm reading a book called Spiritual Serendipity.
Okay.
By the last name is Air, but it's so amazing. He talks about this, the word serendipity in itself, and the practice of serendipity, and basically realizing that he mentions how self-help is not really a concept, because ultimately, we need something or other things in order to help ourselves. So that is not an individual thing. He speaks on that. He speaks on allowing essentially the tides or the waves to guide you and taking you in the directions that the world is meant to lead you in. And the origin of that word came from a guy named, his first name is Horace. I could look it up. That is your dad's name, but basically, Serendip used to be the name of Sri Lanka at some point. It was first Ceylon. It was first Serendip and then Ceylon, or the other way around, and then it became Sri Lanka. But at that time, all the empires and all that region was connected. So he had read a Persian fable by the name of the Three Princes. And it's these princes who their father sets them out on this journey to find this specific thing to stop the curse that's been put on the waters around the area. And the way they move in order to reach that mission is through taking their time and listening and observing and taking everything around them and absorbing it in order to reach that final way, you know, to realize that we are not the only ones who impact our stories. There's something greater than, and whether that be something in the universe, whether that be the energies of everyone else colliding at the same time, or whether that be God, if you believe in God. And it's actually a very beautiful book so far.
Have to check it out.
I'm still just reading into it, but I'm coming back to it after starting it when I was 15. Yeah. I started reading it when I was 15, and then I remember putting it down, and it's still been on my bookshelf. So I was like, okay, this is it, and it's actually really good so far. Yeah, cool. Serendipity.
Okay. I just thought this was weird, just in general, but